Hey everyone, welcome back to the We Did Not Sign Up for This Topic podcast. I'm Banker, and I'm here with...
I'm Noah. Today's episode is, honestly, not what you expect two high school students to be talking about on a Tuesday afternoon.
Okay, we did not expect this assignment to ruin our worldview, but here we are, and now we're questioning the entire school system. Yeah, today we're diving into the topic of eugenics, a topic that sounds super academic, super historical, and super uncomfortable at first, but the more we researched it, the more we realized that it's actually connected to a lot of things we learn in school, a lot of policies that shape the world, and even some debates people are still having today.
Right away, we're not experts at all. We're not historians or scientists. We're just two high school students here trying to wrap our heads around how an idea like this got so powerful and caused damages.
Exactly. So this episode is gonna be super chill, just a simple, honest conversation based on what we learned and our observation. We'll break down the intro of eugenics and how it got so popular, why so many progressive people were actually on board with it, and how it ended up by shaping things like immigration laws and IQ testing in the United States. In this episode, we're exploring how eugenics didn't just belong to the past, it continues to shape the way we judge people, design technology, and structure schools. We look closely at who we targeted and why, beginning with Carrie Buck's story and the disturbing logic behind forced sterilization in the United States. From there, we'll ask whether modern genetic tools like the CRISPR risk repeating the same assumption under the new scientific vocabulary. Finally, we'll examine how echoes of eugenic thinking still appears in education and everyday social expectations, and reflect on what responsibility we will carry as a society moving forward.
We'll get to why it actually matters today, especially with all these new genetic technologies getting more and more advanced.
Alright, so let's get started at the beginning with a not-so-simple definition of eugenic, written by our dear writer teammates, Betty and Ina. And so, what even is eugenics?
Eugenic is a discredited belief that selective breeding for inherited human traits can improve the fitness of future generations. More specifically, eugenicists believe that by using heredity and the laws of inheritance, misapplied from early genetics, society could engineer or improve its population, favoring those deemed fit, such as intelligent, healthy, socially acceptable, and racially preferred, and suppressing the reproduction of those considered unfit.
Eugenics didn't remain as a fringe idea. It translated into a large-scale social policies with a deep harmful consequences. It justified the forced sterilization of tons of thousands of people labeled as unfit, stripping them of bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. At the same time, eugenic ideology legitimized restrictive immigration laws by portraying certain ethnic and national groups as genetically inferior and a threat to the purity of the holy American gene pool. Ultimately, this movement boosted the stigma against people with disabilities, mental illness, or marginalized backgrounds by portraying them as biologically defective and unworthy of full participation in society. At its core, eugenics reinforced systematic racism by recasting social inequality as an inherited biological defect rather than a product of discrimination and environmental factors. For example, the lack of access to the higher education for many African Americans was not seen as a symbol of oppression, but as evidence of inferiority. Policymakers internalized this logic, designing a system of law that regulated marriage and family life with a cold efficiency like a factory assembly line, all under the guidance of this so-called scientific progress.
So, as we have mentioned, we are going to expose a dark history. The idea of eugenics began in the late 19th century. The word itself means good birth, combining the Greek for good and genes. It was started by Francis Galton, who was actually Charles Darwin's cousin.
Now, Francis Galton here has made some magnificent contribution to human society. This man invented the bell curve. He's almost like the godfather of statistics. But however, he believed that just like farmers select strong animal to breed, humans should do something similar. So, he encouraged the idea that good traits to spread and prevent bad traits from being spread on.
By good, they usually mean things like intelligence, health, or success.
And by bad, they meant disability, mental illness, or even speaking a different language, different race, being an immigrant, or coming from the wrong social class.
Which is already a huge red flag, because all of those things are influenced by environment, economics, culture, and discrimination, not just genetics.
But in the early 1900s, people didn't know that. Genetics was new, and a lot of scientists believed everything about a person was inherited.
So, eugenics became popular because it sounded scientific. It had charts, graphs, measurements, and even IQ scores. Even though the science was actually super flawed, because of this flaw, a lot of people were being targeted.
Alright, so we're about to get into one of the most unbelievable, messed up chapters of history. And the wild part is, this happened not that long ago, and it might still be happening somewhere on this planet, secretly.
Yeah, this part honestly felt like a dystopian novel, except it was real. So let's jump in.
Okay, so to start, we need to talk about Carrie Buck. And honestly, this story sounds fake, but it isn't.
Imagine a whole legal case built on a complete lies, and an entire country going like, yep, sounds pretty good.
So here's what happened. Back in the early 1900s, there was this woman called Carrie Buck, who was just 17 when she was sent away to the Virginia colony, pregnant after being raped, and apparently being labeled as feeble-minded, and separated from her newborn daughter, Vivian. Her mother, Emma, was already institutionalized under the same vague accusation. To state officials, the Bucks weren't a family in hardship. They were 3 generations of imbeciles, living proof of the hereditary defect they believed as poisoning society.
In truth, Carrie could read, work, and keep up in school. Vivian would make the honor roll before her early death. None of that mattered. Officials needed a test score to validate Virginia's new sterilization law, and Carrie was chosen because she was powerless, alone, and easy to frame. The trial was never a fair fight. Carrie's court-appointed lawyer was a friend of the people who wanted her sterilized. He called no witnesses. Experts testified confidently, but with almost no science, insisting the Bucks were destined to spread degeneracy. In 1927, the case reached the Supreme Court. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. wrote the majority opinion in just a few pages. He compared sterilization to compulsory vaccines and ended with the chilling line: 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. With that sentence, the court opened the door to more than 60,000 forced sterilization across the U.S. Carrie was operated on shortly after, believing for decades that the country had judged her unfit to be a mother. Years later, researchers have found that the report cards showing that Carrie and Vivian had been perfectly capable, ordinary girls. The tragedy wasn't in their bloodline. It was in a system that chose convenience, prejudice, and fear over justice.
That story sounds horrifying. But that wasn't just an accidental harm. It was a system choosing the most vulnerable girl and deciding that she wasn't worth basic human rights.
Exactly. And what's even worse is, Carrie wasn't an exception. She was the blueprint. So after learning about Carrie, we wanted to know, who else did this happen to? And the answer is, basically the same group society still treats unfair today.
Yeah, the pattern becomes super obvious once you look at the numbers. It's like the system had a checklist. The first target was women. Way more women than men were sterilized. In North Carolina, around 85% of the sterilization were done on women. And by the year of 1960s, they basically stopped sterilizing men altogether.
So basically, sexism with a government stamp. So race actually played a huge role too. The black woman in North Carolina was sterilized at 4 times the rate of which white women and 12 times the rate of white men.
And in California, Latino men and women were significantly more likely to be sterilized than non-Latinos. So this wasn't neutral or scientific, it was pure racism, but dressed up as science. Now let's talk about another pattern: poverty. As Dr. Lombardo discussed in the New England Journal of Medicine, early eugenic policies routinely targeted people who were poor, disabled immigrants, or single mothers, reinforcing the belief that anyone whose life was not perfect should be prevented by the state from reproducing.
And the scale was huge, about 60,000 to 70,000 forced sterilizations in the US alone.
And the US wasn't alone in this. Once eugenics became popular, a lot of countries around the world jumped onto the same train, sometimes even more aggressively. And honestly, some of these cases were shocking when we first look at them. Let's go through a few quick but pretty horrifying examples.
Sweden, from 1934 to 1976, so more than 40 years, had a national sterilization program. About 63,000 people were sterilized. Most of them were women, people living in poverty, and people of mixed heritage. Then, of course, there's Nazi Germany. Between 1933 and 1939, before the Holocaust even began, the Nazis sterilized an estimated 360,000 to 400,000 people who they labeled as disabled or hereditarily unfit. But this wasn't just a Europe thing. In Canada, especially in Alberta and British Columbia, the government sterilized roughly 3,000 people, mostly indigenous women, poor women, and women in institutions. And across the Nordic countries, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, sterilization policies targeted women, disabled people, and anyone considered a social deviant.
Different countries, but the same logic. Even though the details change, the core idea is identical. The state deciding who is fit to produce and who isn't. It shows how fast society can slip into controlling the reproductive lives of people who were considered less valuable. And when you see all these examples together, you realize that this wasn't just a one nation making a terrible choice, it was a global mindset. And so today, we don't sterilize people the way government used to do. But the mindset behind eugenics, the idea that some people are more fit, more responsible, or more worthy of having children, that mindset never fully disappeared.
Yeah, what changes isn't always the system itself. Sometimes it's just the method. The attitudes stay the same, but they show up in new forms.
Take how society still treats certain parents today. Single moms, teenager moms, low-income moms. People judge them instantly. A recent study found out that young mothers often face moral judgments and structural disadvantages like unstable housing and poverty. And these challenges get twisted into evidence that they were irresponsible or bad parents.
Which is basically the modern version of calling someone unfit, just without the court orders or sterilization papers. It's the same logic, just repackaged. And get this, child welfare system and social services sometimes act in ways that echo old eugenic patterns. Not through forced surgeries, but through things like heavy surveillance, strict conditions for financial support, pressure around contraception, deciding which parents are high risk. It's less violent, but still controlling.
Another study shows that single mothers, especially low-income ones, are often treated with mistrust by welfare agencies. They get judged through the lens of risk or dependency or poor decision-making. And when institutions decide who deserves support and who doesn't, it's still rooted in the idea that some families are more worthy than others, which is exactly the mindset eugenics depended on.
So who's responsible today? It's not as simple as pointing at one group or one institution. It's more like recognizing that the legacy of eugenics live inside the system, policies, and cultural judgments that we barely question.
Exactly. Responsibility today isn't about blaming people for things that happened 100 years ago. It's about acknowledging that we inherited the consequences. Biased system, unequal treatment, stereotypes about good versus bad parents, unequal access to resources and healthcare, and the idea that some lives are more valuable or productive than others. We're responsible for not letting these ideas keep repeating themselves.
So the real question becomes, how do we honor the people harmed by eugenics and make sure we don't repeat it?
Well, there's a few ways. First, recognition. Many victims, especially those who were sterilized without consent, never got apologies or compensation. Honoring them means that telling their stories honestly and not hiding this story because it's uncomfortable.
Second, reforming systems so they don't keep making the same judgment. Child welfare, public health, and social services need to be rebuilt with trust and support, not suspicion and control.
And third, challenging the mindset itself. Whenever we hear people say things like, some people shouldn't have kids, certain families are just problematic, we need to control this population, we should recognize these ideas as a direct echo of eugenics thinking.
Because honestly, honoring the past isn't about museums or memorials. It's about making sure the same logic doesn't slip quietly into modern policies or everyday judgments.
So, when we look back at the past, it's not some ancient mistake, it's a warning.
Exactly. The logic of eugenics didn't vanish. It's just found new ways to show up, which is why it's on us to keep talking about it, recognizing it, and challenging it.
Alright, so before we jump into the whole are we accidentally doing eugenics again thing, let's talk about CRISPR, because that word shows up everywhere and most people pretend they understand it.
Yeah, like when someone nods in biology class, but is actually thinking about bubble tea.
Exactly. So here's the real explanation. CRISPR, CRISPR, shorts for Cluster Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. It's basically a high-tech genetic editing tool that scientists borrowed from bacteria. It's like having tiny molecular scissors that can cut up DNA, remove the chalk, fix something, or paste in something new. Bacteria originally used this system to fight off virus, and now we used it to change genes in plants, animals, and possibly humans.
So, in other words, humans saw bacteria doing something cool and said, I want that.
Pretty much. So after everything we talked about, forced sterilization, government control, deciding who fit and who is not, reproducing, it's easy to think that, okay, but that was the past. We're way more advanced now. Science is better. Society is more ethical. But here's the thing. Technology changes faster than our value is. And sometimes, old ideas come back wearing new outfits.
Right, and one of the biggest new outfits today is gene editing tech, especially in CRISPR, which lets scientists go into DNA and basically cut, replace, or rewrite genes. For curing diseases, amazing. For preventing suffering, incredible potential.
But when we think about how eugenics works, trying to improve the population, trying to control which traits get to pass on, you start to wonder, are we actually done with that mindset? Or is it just sneaking back through high-tech tools?
Exactly. For someone hearing this for the first time, the connection might not be that obvious. So let's lay it out step by step.
So one big red flag here is social pressure. Scholars warn that once gene editing become a choice on the menu, it can stop feeling like a choice at all. Parents might start thinking like, if I don't give my child the best genes, am I disadvantaging them? And boom, now choice becomes soft coercion. Not the old eugenics with government force, but the new one where society quietly tells you what traits are normal or acceptable.
It's like when everyone suddenly buys the same trendy backup and you feel weird for not having it, except now it's DNA.
Yeah, right? And historically, eugenics always used this logic of fitness. Now, it just shows up with a better mindset or marketing.
Okay, but now let's talk about money. Because CRISPR is not going to be on sale at Costco.
Yeah, exactly. If only wealthy families can afford gene editing, we're basically creating literal biological classes. Some scholars call it neuroeugenics, like Eugenics 2.0, but with a tech startup, ethics.
So the rich get genetically boosted kids and everyone else stays the same?
Yeah, and it mirrors history. Eugenics always targeted marginalized groups, while privileged groups benefits. The technology changes, but the power imbalance doesn't. Now, before we keep going, we need to make something really clear. Everything we talked about previously is just a projection. This is not what's happening in the hospital right now. Doctors are not out there designing super babies. Most CRISPRs used today is still on an early age, tightly regulated, and focused on treating serious genetic diseases.
Exactly. So the worries we're bringing up aren't about what medicine is doing today. They are about the future direction society might take if we are not careful. It's kind of like looking back at the history again of eugenics and asking like, okay, what can we learn from that so we don't repeat it?
So, who would even get access to genetic enhancement first? Let's be real, probably the wealthy families. The one already able to buy the best schools, tutoring, healthcare, you name it.
Exactly. New technology always starts expensive. Look at IVF. When it first came out, only the rich could afford it. Now imagine that, but for better height, lower disease risk, even like enhanced memory someday.
And once only wealthy families can afford genetic upgrades, you basically create biological inequality on top of social inequality. Some people are born with advantages, others aren't. Not because of efforts or environment, but because of money.
The International Commission on Human Genome Editing even warned that access to enhancement could deepen global inequality if it ever becomes real.
Okay, think about this. If only some people get access to improvements, those improvements become inherently advantage. And so inequality doesn't just stay the same, it compounds across generations.
And suddenly, we are back to a world where certain traits are labeled better, and certain people are seen as more valuable than others. And society quietly recreates the same hierarchy that eugenics pushed a century ago, just with science instead of sterilization laws. Okay, here's where it gets spooky. What happens when school, jobs, or even the governments start to preferring the enhanced kids?
Then we're basically rebuilding the old eugenics structure, deciding whose potential is worth investing in. Legal scholars even argue that the modern biotech governance echoes historical coercion.
So, if the world starts rewarding the genetically enhanced population, just like the rest of us become discount humans?
Hopefully not. But that's exactly why regulations matters. We can't stop scientific progress, but we can make sure it doesn't repeat the past. Now let's talk about how do we regulate the gene editing thing. Well, first of all, one major solution is drawing a hard line between treating diseases and enhancing traits. A lot of national ethics boards argue that we should only use gene editing to prevent serious diseases, not to engineer better babies.
So basically, yes to fixing genetic illnesses, but a no to turning your kid into an NBA player.
Pretty much.
Now let's talk about the long-term safety of monitoring. Another thing is that whatever we edit now affects future generations. So we need to transparent, long-term, and also independent review. The International Commission's primary action was to develop an international framework outlining the rigorous scientific, medical, and ethical requirements necessary for any potential future use of heritable human genome editing like CRISPR, concluding that the technology is not yet safe or effective for initial clinical application. This kind of framework provides a structured oversight pathway for researchers and regulators to follow, ensuring the responsibility use and preventing the unregulated practices should society ever approve such applications.
Because once you change someone's DNA, you can't exactly undo it like deleting an app. Now, national ethic groups like the Newfield Council say we should only allow gene editing if it reduces inequality instead of increasing it.
Right, because if CRISPR deepens the rich and poor divide, we are back to square one.
Now let's talk about some personal reflection questions. Noah, if you could pick your baby's height or intelligence, is that going too far?
Yeah, it's absolutely, bro. If everyone starts to choosing their heights, their intelligence, or even the perfectness of them, how do we ever define the differences between anyone? Like, who can decide what is better? And what will happen if people who already aren't perfect exist in the world?
Well, I'd say there are two sides to think of it. As a parent, sure, we want the best of our kids. The height, intelligence, athletic talents, it all sounds like a fast path to success. Just like in the movie Gattaca, right? The genetically enhanced brother is clearly favored by their parents. The system treats him like he was born to win. So as a parent, of course, I want to guarantee my kid for a future success. But on the other hand, I think I want my kid to be able to choose his own destiny, and so as parent, I should have no right to interfere with his fate. Now, Noah, if you could remove genetic disease, will you choose to do so?
Well, I mean, of course, but we have to think about what CRISPR can realistically do for right now, for the technology, and also the ethical guidelines and the risk.
Yeah, removing genetic diseases could reduce stigma too. Like, if ADHD could be removed, maybe families would avoid years of, conflicts and misunderstanding. But erasing some conditions might prevent so much unnecessary pain. And do you think, Noah, would CRISPR create a genetically privileged class?
Well, honestly, yes. This tech will be expensive, companies can make profits on it, and inequality will explode. The world's first approved CRISPR-based cell therapy on Casgevy has been priced at $2.2 million per patient. Dr. Ruda, analyzing the reasons behind this high price, has claimed that this might pose a major ethical issue in terms of equitable access and global health, where only small group within wealthy families will be able to benefit directly from the therapy.
Also, capitalism sees human as resources, right? That's what we learned from basic economics. If we create a genetically privileged class, companies and elite schools will absolutely take advantage. Harvard already looks like a, genetically privileged cluster. Well, imagine adding CRISPR's kids to that mix. Sounds like creating a genetic army, right?
Yeah, but people who can't afford genetic editing could be left behind entirely.
Okay, so after talking about how CRISPR might accidentally drag us back into the eugenics territory, let's take a detour into something way closer to home.
Yeah, like your school, your AP classes, and your counselor telling you that this class might be a better fit for you. Spoiler, sometimes that's not about your fit. It's about old science with creepy roots.
Exactly. Now let's talk about how eugenics still shapes modern educations. Like we've talked about before, AP tests, tracking, labels, all that stuff we grew up thinking like it was normal.
Now let's talk about IQ tests were actually created by eugenicists. So let's start with everyone's favorite trauma trigger, the IQ test.
Yeah, the test that decides whether you are a gift child or someone they just said that you might do extra worksheets on the hallway.
The first widely used modern intelligence test basically is the ancestors of today's IQ test. Was created in the early 20th century and immediately became tools for sorting kids by mental ability. Even though the OG test creators like Alfred Bennett and Theodore Simon actually wanted to help children who needed more support, later psychologists twisted the whole thing into a measurement of innate intelligence. And once people started treating IQ as fixed and also inherited, boom, it aligned perfectly with eugenic ideology. If your score was high, you are fitted. If it was low, you are unfit.
Basically, it's like, congratulations, you took a test, and now society has decided your destiny.
Yep, and that mindset actually spread really fast.
Okay, now Noah, let's talk about early schools use, tests to sort out smart kids and slow kids.
Okay, so let's time travel back to the early 1900s when schools were like, hey, what if we just rank kids forever?
And that's literally what they did. Schools use intelligence tests to sort out students into tracks, not based on learning needs, but based on the belief that kids had genetically fixed levels of intelligence. These tests were also used to justify placing immigrants, working class, and minority children into lower academic tracks. The idea was intelligence is inherited. Don't waste resources on kids who won't improve.
That's insane. That's literally just scientific sounding racism.
Exactly, it's like eugenics in a school uniform. Well, how about modern trackings? Like, we got this AP classes, honor classes, special eds. Are they still reflects on, old logic?
Okay, but it's from the past, right? We don't do that anymore.
Oh no, you are being so optimistic. Well, modern tracking, AP versus non-AP, gifted programs versus, special education, isn't explicitly eugenic, but it reproduces the same inequality. White and higher income students are still way more likely to be placed in an AP or honor track. Black, Latino, and low-income students are underrepresented, even when their test scores are the same. Special education also shows that disproportionality, black students are more likely to be labeled with emotional disturbance or intellectual disability. These patterns reflect to old IQ-based sorting: who's gifted, who's behind, and who gets the opportunities.
So, schools will basically said that we stopped eugenics but kept the Excel spreadsheet template.
Now, who gets left behind?
Okay, but let's ask the big question now. Who's actually paying the price for this?
Short answer, the same groups eugenics always targeted.
Students from marginalized communities like the Black, Latinos, immigrants, and also the low-income ones are still placed into lower tracks earlier and give fewer academic resources. So schools in low-income areas don't even offer as many AP classes like the advanced teachers or even enrichment programs. And because standardized tests were built on biased assumptions, students who doesn't match the norm, those tests were designed around like the white, middle-class kids, and they tend to score relatively lower, further reinforcing the old eugenic ideas about the ability.
So the system basically saying that let's keep deciding who deserves opportunity just because of their, graphic design. Okay, so let's bring it back to us because, we all live in today's society. So Noah, do you feel standardized tests really reflects intelligence?
Not at all. A lot of standardized tests measured strategy like task-taking skills and access to prep resources. Wealthier students or family can also literally get more ways to learn the game.
Exactly, and I think tests reflect some forms of intelligence, but in a super narrow way. Rich kids naturally have advantage, and genius who think differently, they get ignored because they don't fit the test format. Well, Noah, have you ever felt labeled by a score or a class level?
Yes, like back in when I'm in my elementary school, our seating arrangement is actually dependent on the monthly exam scores. Imagining like you're sitting in the dumb row. Horrible, right? This even reminds me of the idea of cognitive elite. It made me feel like small and stupid. Now I see it was an early lesson about how society actually values. And they actually separate the smart from the dumb so young. That classroom was just the beginning.
Yeah, I totally feel you, man. Well, since I was diagnosed with ADHD in a very young age, I have been discriminated throughout my whole life. A score becomes an identity to me. Alright, Noah, we've been talking about how eugenics shape education, but now we're moving into some deep stuff like, oh, humans have too much power part. Yeah.
Yep, the part where the audience starts questioning like every sci-fi movie they've ever watched.
Exactly, so let's talk about ethics, specifically choice versus coercion. Sounds boring, but trust me, history made it dramatic. So here's the deal. Real reproductive autonomy, like actual freedom, only exists when there's no punishment, no pressure, and no fake informed consent happening in places where power is totally unequal.
Right, like if someone says to you like it's voluntary, but also says that sign this or you lose welfare. That's not voluntary, that's a threat, dressed in polite vocabulary.
Yo, exactly. And historically, that's what happened. Poor women, disabled people, women with color, they were told sterilized because their choice. But the entire situation was shaped by fear and consequences. Dorothy Roberts shows this clearly. Black women were often coerced during routine medical care, and the system twisted choice into something unrecognizable.
So basically, coercion put on a lab coat and pretended to be ethics.
Perfectly said. And states justified it with normal language, protection, public health, and saving taxpayers' money. Alexandra Stern documents how eugenics boards framed forced sterilization as a public good. The branding was pretty, but actions were not. So how do we avoid repeating history?
Okay, so that's the horror story part. Now, how do we not do that same thing again?
Step 1. Admit that eugenics wasn't some weird fringe conspiracy. It was mainstream. Universities, judges, doctors, everyone was on board. Paul Lombardo shows how deep institutional support went. And if you don't understand the past, you can't recognize when something similar starts happening today.
Kinda like knowing your ex red flag, so you don't gonna date the same guy twice.
Exactly! And step 2, build laws that certain bodily autonomy. The UN's Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities says states must eliminate substituted decision-making and guarantee disabled people full legal capacity, meaning that they make decisions about their own bodies.
Crazy that we even have to say this.
Yeah, and step 3 is including people who were historically harmed in oversight and ethics bodies. Disabled people, minority communities, anyone who has experience with medical discrimination. Adrian Ash argues that disabled voices are essential because they challenge the assumption that disability equals a life not worth living.
So basically, if you are going to make rules about people's lives, maybe let them talk.
Revolutionary concept.
Now let's talk about disability rights and also perspectives. Alright, so let's talk about their rights. You know, I love this section.
Same. Disability activities point out something huge. The goal shouldn't be eliminating disability. It should be eliminating the barriers society creates.
Exactly. Humans are different. That's normal. Society just sucks at accommodating.
And the CRPD says disability doesn't come from bodies. It comes from environments and systems that refuse to adapt. This flipped the whole eugenic idea of fixing people upside down.
And the clinical gate saying, where disability is seen as abnormal, needing treatment instead of support, humans are reduced to objects needed for medical examination, while personal backgrounds of disease development were neglected. That's still happening in today.
Yup, and prenatal testing debates can repeat old patterns without us noticing. Roberts explains how risk-based reproductive counseling disproportionately targets marginalized women, echoing old eugenic ideas about who should or who shouldn't have children.
So let's get to the topic of who gets to decide what's actually normal. So this is the question that scares me the most. Like, who decides what's actually normal?
Well, historically, elite, white, male, able-bodied people. and shaped by wide epistemology, meaning that they define what counted as knowledge and science.
And everyone else get labeled as less than.
Exactly. Lombardo shows that the eugenic courts used vague, subjective, biased criteria to judge people's worth. And those judgments stuck for life. So, if today we start talking about genetic optimization, population health, or public burden, we should have asked ourselves who benefits and who gets harm.
That's why Ash warned us. Anything that claims to improve our society might just be repeating old prejudices with better technology.
So we've talked about the past, the present, and now let's talk about the future. So Noah, what scares you the most about future genetics?
Well, definitely being able to choose your child. Like, everything became more standardized. Who can define who is perfect and who is less? Disadvantages, and everyone chasing the same perfectness definition of human.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think, the whole cloning technology scares me out. Say if you can clone me. Yeah, is it me? Like, is it actually still Banker? Or is it just a different consciousness? Like, this story reminds me of Liu Cixin's book, the guy traveling between Earth and the moon. But when people destroying his body each time when he traveled, does the destroying body part count as, eliminating a human being or a life? Or is this just, a sort of consciousness that's carrying your mindset? It's like a body, it's like a robot or something.
Okay, that's actually horrible. Like, what gives you hope then?
Yeah, advances in medical science, that's what it gives us hope. Because people will be able to live longer, leaving suffering behind.
For me, it's the possibility of curing diseases, especially for families who can't afford the treatments.
Wow, that was a lot. Honestly, way more intense than what we thought we were signed up for, right?
Yeah, today we went from the origins of eugenics to Carrie Back's story to global policies, to the ways those ideas still echo today in stigma, systems, and even in modern genetics like CRISPR.
And the more we dig into it, the more we realize that this isn't just a history, it's a reminder that when science, powers, and bias mix together, real people get hurt.
So if there's one takeaway from this episode, it's this. We have to stay aware. We have to question who will get benefits, who gets excluded, and who gets labeled fit or unfit, especially for now, when technology is moving faster than ever.
So we have a few questions for the audience. If society can edit our undesirable traits, what happens to the inherent right to be different or imperfect? Does eliminating suffering also eliminate a necessary part of the human experience? If I was genetically edited before birth, how much of my identity and success is truly mine versus the product of my parents' genetic design choices? So, thanks again for listening to the podcast that we did not sign up for this topic. And if you stuck with us throughout all of that, well, you're a real one. And if you vibed with today's episode, hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments below.
We'll be back next time with a topic we hopefully did sign up for.
See you then!